Welcome to the Firecast. We had an amazing conversation today with Gary Gold. Gary is one of the biggest luxury realtors in the United States. Some of his incredible sales included the $100 million sale of the Playboy Mansion, the Hearst Estate, and lots of other huge sales. One of the things that was amazing about this interview is Gary tells you how to break into the luxury market, including his growth from selling a $1 million house to $3 million to $6 million, how he made that transition to a $20 million house, and then eventually how to close the $100 million sale. And that game changer that's basically sitting right in front of all of us. And no matter what your price point is, there is a sale out there that can be a game changer for you. That's just one of the many things that we hit in today's podcast. And here we go. Gary Gold, welcome to the Firecast.
Is it called the Firecast?
It is. There you go.
All right. Welcome to the Firecast.
Wow.
Yeah, we got quite a superstar here.
Like the Fire Festival? I hope not.
Oh, yeah. Well, they were doing a redo on that, so they're trying to get that right.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be a big insurance policy right there.
Yeah.
What an icon in our business, such as I've got to know you a little bit, so authentic, so genuine, and just someone who's just so interesting.
I think I like icon better than legend. Legend sounds you're good at,
we'll get into
die.
That.
Yep.
Icon.
You got a lot in you for sure. There's no doubt. So grateful to have you here.
Thank you.
Excited to learn. So
and one of the things that people either will already know about you if they know you, and if not, it's sort of the headline grabbers, and that is, sale of the Playboy Mansion.
I can work that, by the way, into any conversation, and I do.
I love it. I love
Shamelessly.
it. Yep. I love it. Sale of the Playboy Mansion,
yep.
which was also the first home, maybe in the United States, to sell for over $100 million.
In Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles.
There was one in There was a bigger sale in New York, in the Hamptons, but it was 5 parcels, and then there was a larger one up north in like Atherton.
Wow.
And what year was that?
2016.
Yeah.
2016.
Playboy Mansion, and then also the Hearst Estate, which we had an interesting,
which was
at the
time for about a minute. It was the biggest sale of a piece of real estate, residential, to sell in an auction. And then I sold the Beverly Hillbillies estate.
Oh, wow!
And that was for $150 million.
Wow.
So that outdid the Playboy Mansion.
And that was what year?
20, I think.
Okay.
21, I think.
Oh, so pretty recent. Yeah, that would make sense for $150 million sale.
Wow.
I could be off.
Yeah. So that in and of itself is extremely impressive. It's impressive to do one of those sales, but to do multiple of that sort of magnitude is pretty remarkable.
It was funny when I had sold the Playboy Mansion on I think it was like a Thursday. That night I flew to Vegas for a Tom Ferry annual summit on a Friday. And it was news, so there was 5,000 agents, they all knew I sold that.
Wow.
That was my 15 minutes. But I remember Tom, the first day, has me stand up and he starts talking about the sale. And then he goes, "How are you going to top that?" And I was literally, I'm not usually at loss for words. I go, "How do you top that?"
And you
then
did?
He goes, "Come on, you can." I go, "Okay." I go, "I don't know how to do that. It's the most expensive sale in LA, but okay, I'm going to sell one for more money." I had no idea how to do it, and it did happen.
How does someone get in line for that type of a sale? Because, obviously you sell luxury property for sure, and just the outlier. How do you get in? How do you get in the queue for that?
That's exactly how to. And by the way, that type of sale, that kind of like game-changing sale for you, that just trajectory-changing sale, can look very different where you live, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. It could be a $5 million sale.
Yeah,
in a
it's
certain
all
area.
relative, right?
Yes.
Yep.
But I think the better, more relevant question is, how do you get these like iconic sales, something that's so high profile, so expensive for the area. And I have this belief, because I thought about it a lot, because thousands of people ask me that question. Every agent will get multiple opportunities in their career to get involved in a transaction and make a sale that can change their career. A lot of people don't even recognize it when it happens, and it's important to recognize what's going on. It's important to seize that moment, and it's important to leverage it. About 6 years prior to selling the Playboy Mansion, I couldn't stand being in real estate anymore. I wanted to get out. I literally wanted to quit. I just don't have any other, I just didn't know what else I could do. And it was a whole process. Because I've been successful multiple times in my career. I've had a bunch of reinventing myself, but at this time, 6 years later, I remember I couldn't get a $3 million listing. Something had gone terribly awry. I got involved in developments. I went all in on that, and I had over $1 billion worth of listings. And I remember I'm about to sell this property downtown where we're going to do like a Ritz-Carlton residences for this client who's a big developer, and he owned the Cosmopolitan in Vegas, and I was selling like half of those, the second half of it. Wow. I was rolling. It was all great. And I called him up I go, we got to get the deposit in on the, it was a St. Regis, by the way, not a Ritz.
Okay.
On the St. Regis to downtown on that property.
Yep.
And he said, "You didn't hear?" I go, "Hear what?" He just says, "It's over." I go, "What do you mean it's over?" I go, "There's no more money. It is over." And that's when the bust happened. And all that time I had put into developments, I had made some money.
Yep.
But I literally went all in on developments. I had effectively what would be thousands of properties that I was going to be selling, and I thought this was amazing. And I went all in on that, and it all fell apart.
Wow.
And
I see. So you had a lot invested already.
I went all in. I was selling very few resales. So when I went back into resale, no one knew who I was, even though I already had, like, at that point, over 20 years in the business. It didn't matter. You'd go away for a period of time, people forget about you.
Yep.
Real estate agents are like athletes in terms of, we're in an execution business. No matter what you've done yesterday, none of that matters. It matters because if you had that success, you can be bringing it with you today, but you've got to bring it with you today. Yep. And just like, so we are completely performance-based, execution-based. And
I'll tell you what I love about that statement, because there is a flip side to it. And so you work so hard and you develop all these skills and you're doing great, and people forget about you, and in the course of a few years for sure. You're like, wow, that's a bummer. The flip side to that is, if you're newer to the business, that's about how long it takes you to create this sort of great tailwind. When things change so quickly, the seated experts can be unseated.
100%.
Yeah.
I did a course last year, and I called it "Competing to Beat the Best." It was based on that, how you can compete against the best agents for the best listings, wherever that might be, and beat them, because there is some vulnerability. Because I just thought of this for the first time. It's not as much as people forget about you; it's that you forget about you, and there's something you're not doing that you used to be doing. And that's what leads to that. In that particular case, it was understandable. I shifted and went into this whole other business effectively. So when I came back, I couldn't get arrested. Literally couldn't get arrested. And there was another lesson here. The one thing that saved me is, at the time, when I got back in developments, I had budgets to advertise developments. And I thought Zillow at the time. I just thought this was like a bus bench. I just thought it was some tacky thing. I didn't get it. And no one in Beverly Hills was like registering with Zillow, doing anything. It was not cool. It was
things are done differently.
It wasn't elevated.
Yeah,
exactly. But with this development, I had a budget, and someone said, "No, you got to try this thing." And he sold inexpensive things, but I was selling a pretty nice, expensive development, and I had to show them like
progress,
a comprehensive plan, what I want to do. And at the time, at the time, most people were looking for homes on a computer, not on a phone. And there was a banner that you would pay for, and then there was on the side at the top, you'd pay for that. Those were display ads. Then what is known as like buying a zip code today, those came free if in the areas that you paid for these. This was a freebie. I didn't even know about it. So I was buying all these ads for my clients here. They would just automatically put my name here.
Wow.
And I owned Beverly Hills and the Sunset Strip. So as I am like fading out of developments, I started getting all these calls from people on properties I did not have anything to do with, and I didn't even understand it because I had those two spots. So when I got out of developments, I kept those zip codes, and that helped me get out of the rut I was in because I was getting all these leads from Zillow at the time.
And how do you explain that other than, hey, right place, right time?
That's what I was going to say. Is there a lesson in that? I'm trying
to... is there a lesson in that? Yeah, I guess I'm thinking one right now, especially our business changes. There's a lot of fundamentals that never change, and there's a lot that change. And if there was ever an opportunity for people who are newer to get a foothold, is that people who are successful are going to continue doubling down on what they do. And I think some of them will put effort into updating what they're doing, but a lot won't. And there was a time where, and it wasn't that long ago, being successful in real estate was a very analog thing. There were these fundamental things. And as the world's changing, there's more marketing opportunities. I mean,
so how do you take that? Because I know we talk about it all the time, and a lot of our coaching is like consistency, which is critical, which is sort of repetition.
That's old school.
Yeah, that's what.
But it's
and
still
at the
true.
same time, a willingness to pivot and adapt, and have some foresight to be willing to pivot and adapt, and
then there's also
and it's that balance, right?
There's also the people that will use some of these new things to avoid doing what they really need to do, which is having the conversations that you have to have.
That's dumb.
Yeah,
because all the marketing you do is leading you to be able to get on the phone, in person with somebody. That's what it's to lead to. There are people that want to spend money and they think all of a sudden leads are going to be handed to you. And when I worked with Zillow, I did a lot of stuff for them. And they used to call people. They used to call me every once in a while, not every once in a while, a lot, and say, "Can you talk to this agent? They don't know how to use this. They want to get rid of it." And these people, I think people literally expected to get just come list me's. And it's not that. But there's so many things, there's so many interesting ways to get attention now.
I always say nothing replaces, and to your point, marketing is designed to create more and get you a conversation.
But it keeps on changing and it keeps on getting interesting. And if you're super successful, when I moved to Beverly Hills in 1990, 89, and still to a certain degree today, everyone who was successful, it was all based on relationships and schmoozing.
Oh, yeah.
You would do the other things, but that's what would be it. There were probably other parts of the country that was a little different. If you were selling expensive homes in areas that people aren't frequenting, probably a different marketing gig. Here, people come here, whether they live here or not. So,
and I assume that still remains the case. I assume
it does, but you can get people's attention in ways that are purely based on marketing. And if you're doing that and making the calls, and you need an air game, you need a ground game.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I love
you
it.
need both.
Yep.
If you independently, they don't work.
Right.
If you just have this big air game, but you're just not in the ground, you're wasting it.
I think ground game
Ground
does
game to
work
me is
on
conversation.
its own, but ground game works on its own.
Yeah.
It can.
It's elevated by air game for sure.
I always say
let me give you some
air
examples.
game amplifies.
Yeah.
Let me just
ground
give you
game.
examples where you think that's going to work and it doesn't. And this is where some people with a lot of experience, a lot of success, start scratching their head. Old client, this, that, the other. They meet an old client, or they're just doing their ground game, and they've got someone just within their reach. They're going to take them out as a buyer, or more importantly, get a listing. And then all of a sudden, when a seller's at that point, at the very bottom of the funnel, when they're going to do something, they're very open. They're very vulnerable. They're looking at everyone. I always say,
creates an opportunity for someone else to come in.
Right. So you built this relationship over time, but now when they're really ready to move, they're open.
They're hyper going to do something. It's
That's
similar
cool
to,
point.
I think when people are going to, especially if they're going to have kids around it, at some point when they're ready to get married, they could be with someone and they're like engaged. That person still is vulnerable to, they're going to make a decision with the person that they're counting on or not, or often. It's that type of thing. They are good to go. So if they're in that space and they're dealing with their person who isn't reinforcing their value proposition, they're just focusing on the relationship, and all of a sudden they're just getting one thing after another everywhere they look from some agent who's just got a market. His market gig is just phenomenal. He's seeing him everywhere. That person last minute
can come in
and say, you know what? This
I love you, but
and then we heard our friend, and they're so great, and you did not show your value. You took it for granted, and then there's a lot of strategy. When I start at the beginning, when there's someone to lead, and in luxury real estate, the gestation process can be 5 years. As people have more, it goes longer when people have more options. So you could be working with somebody, and I'm a big fan of catching people early. And then you're keeping in touch to a certain degree. As it gets right to the bottom where they're like ready to go. I talk to them 10 times a day.
So you just,
I don't want to give them any opportunity to talk to someone else. You could blink for a week or 10 days and miss somebody, and someone else goes in there.
As they get down that funnel toward actually making a move.
And is that, so I'm
going to you're putting the full court press on.
Yes. Now, if you've done your work, whether you're brand new or you're very experienced, and you've established that relationship and you continue it to the very end, it's very difficult to beat you. But if
many people take their foot off the pedal as they
take their foot off the pedal, whether you're really experienced or not. And that is critical, because at the end of the day, they want to work with people they like. But if for whatever reason, and through marketing and through influence of other people, they think, well, this might be a better decision for me, they're going to do that.
And I'm going to come back to how do you, and I forget what Paul asked, but how do you position yourself to get that huge sale? That's where we started. See it. I'm using my own
Recognize
words.
it.
See it, seize it,
seize
leverage
the moment.
it.
Leverage
So,
it.
I'll give you an example. I mean, I'll just use Playboy Mansion. I remember have a client, and I knew that he worked for, I knew that he was involved with the Playboy Mansion. He ran a private equity firm, and one day he just said, I didn't think that much of it. I didn't even really think of the Playboy Mansion like it's real estate. And I just said, he says to me, what do you think it's worth? What do you think the Playboy Mansion's worth?
He asked you, right?
I've never been there. I really didn't know much about it. I just knew it was a mansion in Holmby Hills. But I really didn't think of it as real estate, and I literally didn't know. And all I did right there is I said, Playboy Mansion's unique. It has some intrinsic value beyond just being a piece of real estate. Let me just give that some thought, and I'll get back to you. I just wanted to keep the conversation going.
Open, yes.
And this is one of my big strategies to do things I don't know how to do.
Yeah. And that's the recognize it piece, but also a strategy on what you don't know how to do. Yeah, I get that.
Under that category, I don't try to I don't ask that question, how am I going to get the listing and then sell the Playboy Mansion? I always ask, and this is where I learned it, what's the next step? I'm
laughing because can I just say this?
Yeah.
That is how I live my life.
You stole
What's
that
the next
me.
step? I did. I must have. I appreciate it.
What's the next step?
And I'm going to stop and put a point on that because one of the things that Josh does was very, very useful for me is let's say we're trying to, in somewhere in our mind we're like, we're going to recruit Gary Gold to our brokerage. And then Josh would say, and I would go, well, I know Gary. We've been in the business a long time. And I am making this up a little bit, although we'd love to have you, of course. And
hypothetical
situation. Yeah, and so you get this big realtor. And so basically I call the realtor, like, hey, haven't talked to you in a while. Let's have sit down. I want you to meet Josh. Da, da, da. And they're coming to coffee or lunch because I'm in the business 25 years. They're in the business 25 years. We sit down. At the end of the meeting, Josh is like, okay, great. So what's the next step? And I'm like, the next step for what? Because it would be weird and uncomfortable almost for me to say that because the next step is like, well, we had lunch and, but just Josh asking that and always thinking about the next step because it was a little uncomfortable for me. But then the guy's like, what's the next step? Like, well, I don't know. We could talk some more, and just that's where there's an opportunity there,
yes,
which is similar, which I'm not recognizing.
And I'm going to add to that. So, because you can always figure what's the next step. And by the way, to you out there in the audience, you can be wrong. It doesn't matter.
For sure.
So if you take a next step and you're wrong, okay, well then what's the next step again? So when you do, every next step has another. Yeah. Every action has another next step in it.
An object in motion tends to stay in motion. An object at rest tends to stay at rest.
At that point, at that first, I couldn't even imagine it being sold. And I remember maybe a year later, he says, well, we're thinking of selling it. I couldn't even imagine having the confidence to say, you should list it with me or I'd like to meet with you or any of that. I didn't have the credibility for that. There were others that had made some sales that would have made them the heir apparent to that.
100 million is the biggest sale in LA. The heir apparent to that would be the person that sold the $60 million house or whatever.
And I had sold some big houses. I was a luxury guy, but what I kept on doing is I just kept on taking to the next step. And then as I was doing that, I was starting to go, I remember I first go, this is a joke. And then I'm going, well, I could at least start answering these questions. And then I started to become kind of like his agent. I was his agent, and he just started asking me these questions. So every time I did that, I go, what's the next thing I do? How do I kind of massage this? How do I keep this conversation going?
Paul uses this term, get the homework.
Yeah.
So when you're in a conversation, find out what's of value to your audience.
Exactly.
Get the homework, and it gives you a reason to take the next step, which is to provide the homework.
So and also to show
value,
that I'm to show that I'm a person that follows up, because the number of times that people say, "Oh, I'll figure that out, I'll get back to you," and then they never get back to you. I think it's actually people are surprised when you do that.
That's damaging, right?
Yeah, and it could be anything. It's like, oh, we were with a huge developer, and he's like, oh, I'm looking for a reservation for whatever. I'm like, I could probably get you that reservation. Let me just see. And he's like, oh, okay, whatever. We left, and I
That's huge.
got him the reservation. I'm like, here's the reservation.
Yeah. So
The next step provides the opportunity to follow up and follow through.
And at this point, I didn't really think it was going to be sold. I really didn't think that. I couldn't imagine myself actually asking for it. But what I asked myself after that was, well, how would I sell this? What would I do? And one of my questions is, what resources do I have that what could I put, what resources do I have that will help me towards that? And I did have some resources. I worked for like the most successful real estate company there was. I did have a title there. And I started to put together, I started doing work on it. I started to I started imagining it, not necessarily even believing it yet. But at some point I went from, wow, that was unusual, to, God, that's a long shot, to, well, maybe I could figure this out. Not I figured it out. Maybe I could figure this out. So, I know how I could show my value.
And it started with asking yourself and perhaps your client, what's the next step? Because that
I said ask myself what's the next step.
Yes.
So I kept on doing it. And at one point I went, I am getting this no matter what.
Yes.
It went from zero confidence.
It went from how could I do?
To
How can
I'm
I
getting it
possibly
no
do?
matter
Yes.
what.
Yeah.
And that was very important, because if I didn't say that, I wasn't going to get that. Because I got this all the way down, and I did have a blip where I forgot to, I wasn't following up because I was a little nervous about the comps and what I'd say. And I remember saying, let me get, I sent him these comps. He goes, which I probably think a month earlier I told him I would do it. And they were interviewing people. If I didn't do that, I might not have gotten the call.
Yeah.
So,
and that's all. It's great to hear all of it, because, going from I've sold the Playboy Mansion all the way back to, I didn't have the confidence to even ask for the order, and I'm working my way through. And then also to hear that there were points in your ground game that I dropped the ball.
You said, I didn't follow up on that.
Yeah, I actually fumbled the ball here, but the fumbling the ball is not the end of the game.
Right. Right, 100%. So, and then when on the listing appointment itself, I go, okay, what resources do I have? And I go, because I realized that it was more important that listing was more important than any part of it, not the commission, not anything.
Yes.
I would be a made man. So first thing I did is I was part of Christie's. I said, let's bring in the head of Christie's to bring him in. That'll look good. Even though I don't think that had any real value, it certainly
perceived value.
Yeah. It was it had some. It turned out not having real value, but perceived.
But you
value.
never know.
And I'm bringing in this intelligent guy, and I go, let's bring in the head of marketing in, and then I said, I just want to hedge my bet. I'm bringing in the most badass agent in the office. I'm going to share this with him just to reinforce the deal. And I remember also I got a big offer. I mean, as I said, I was a very successful agent, where Compass at the time was trying to recruit me to be the first agent outside of, I think, Washington and New York.
Right.
And they wanted to go big in LA, and they were trying to build it around me. They didn't have anything going at the time, other than they had success there.
Yep.
And I remember I met with Robert 4 times, and I was considering it. They gave me an enticing offer. And I remember my brother, who taught me real estate, I was asking about it. He goes, why don't you ask your clients? I go, that's not a bad idea. So I did ask that guy. I go, how do you feel about that? And he goes, we want to go with, at the time they were not known. And he goes, one thing I will tell you, we want to go with obvious people. So I didn't move. But there was a whole listing appointment. They interviewed 6 of the biggest agents literally in the United States.
At which time, if you're in Gary's shoes and you've done all this stuff and you've already decided I'm getting this no matter what, at which time, my stomach would be turning. I'd be nervous.
I also asked myself, not only what resources do I have, I have a big saying for people, no matter if they're brand new or they've been in the business 30 years. I always say, sell what you have.
Yep.
So I knew someone in there liked, and trusted me.
Yep.
I can't compare it with the sales and the pedigree of the sales these other people had.
Yep.
So I just said to him, I go, listen, everyone you're meeting with are the best of the best. Every one of them is going to sell your home. And so am I. I know exactly what I'm doing. I will get this done just like everyone else. Here's the difference. For them, it's going to be another notch in their belt. For me, this is going to change my life. You own me. I didn't say it like from a point of weakness. Oh, if I could have this opportunity. It's that I'm going to get this house sold, and this is my priority
number
over
one.
Everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You own me. Fortunately for me, wouldn't have necessarily worked out that way. I think some of the people they interviewed were on the arrogant side, and my humility, saying that worked. Because most people don't have the balls to do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And
they try to be cool, but I knew I couldn't compete in that.
I gotta say this: I'm so like humility with confidence, and the confidence comes from preparation.
Yeah,
which
is
ready. Yeah. You are prepared, and you're confident and humble. And I think so many people think they're like
it's
mutually
false
exclusive,
humility, but it's the same.
Yeah. So, but I think but I know you are. I know you are, and you are humble, and you're confident. And I'd like to consider myself the same. And we're always striving to learn and improve and innovate and progress and adapt. And that's what you are. And you don't take things for granted. And people feel that. And when you say you don't take things for granted. Right. But you say it with confidence, then you're right. It's not coming from a position of weakness. It's coming from a position of strength. And when people feel that and it's authentic, it's like, how could I not go with Gary?
So I was up against really formidable people.
Yep.
And I remember my client said, you got this. I mean, everyone really thought you were the choice. But we got one more person to interview. We have one more person. And I go, okay. So he goes, we're meeting him this afternoon. He calls me back and says, Gary, we just met with this other agent, and the board, including me, all were absolutely blown away of how they handle it, what they're going to offer, and we unanimously decided to list it with this other agent. Now you're dancing on your feet. Nope.
Okay, I love it. Yes.
I don't think I've ever been this confident in anything in my life. I already decided I'm selling this house. I went, okay, how do I get to there? I mean, Kobe with 5 seconds left in a game is not choking.
Yep.
How do I get this ball in that basket? That's it.
Yep.
And I had that because I was so conditioned that this is what I'm getting.
Yep.
And yes, I was so my brain was, and I did stand up, so I have a very quick brain of like trying to piece all these things together. And I said to him, I go, completely understand. No one is better at demonstrating why they are how they're going to market and why they're the best company. They've got the absolute best presentation in the business, bar none. I totally get where you're at. I said, I said he does, but I go, where are we? And this is very important. I'm talking about him
versus
and then I'm talking about my company.
Correct.
Sell what you have. I said, where we shine isn't selling them. Let me send you a spreadsheet of the most expensive homes that have sold in the last 5 years and what percentage my company sold and what percentage of their company sold. I'll have it to you in 15, 20 minutes. And the board was still together. I sent it to him. He calls me back in about 10 minutes and goes, you guys are going to co-list it, which was fine.
Mm-hmm.
But
because you needed your name on that thing.
And then there's sometimes there's a pop fly and out, center field, 3 people could catch it. Someone says, I got it. That's what happened with the sale of that. I mean, I really was outclassed with the people I was working with. But I just was like a bulldog. I said, at the very beginning, we all did our thing, and then I just literally hogged the ball.
Yeah.
So I said, I got this. And I within 6 weeks, I did everything. And I wasn't even, and it was complicated. It needed one person's focus.
Yeah.
And that's what I did.
That's what,
and what happens
they watched me sell it.
Yeah. When you get the listing, and you're, like you said, there's 3 people on it. They're already thinking, so when we sell it, we're going to make this much or whatever, or that, to that point. And so when you step up to the plate, you're creating a stake in the ground, and people will stand back and let you do your thing.
They were really successful. They were really busy. Really busy. One of them.
One guy wants to do all the heavy lifting. Okay, have at it.
And both are completely competent.
Yeah.
But I just took it on myself, and why were they going to mess with it? And it was complicated. I mean, he got to Hugh Hefner, who didn't own it effectively. Mm-hmm. He got to live there for the rest of his life.
I remember.
And it also, you had to close escrow and run the house, which was very expensive and falling apart. There was a lot of moving parts. It took months. Mm-hmm. And
I remember.
I was just focused on getting that deal done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I was at a party at the Playboy Mansion.
You were.
And I have to find the photo, because one of the things that he did.
I saw the photo up. They had like archives, and I remember seeing that.
Yeah, I remember seeing it with me. Okay. That's good. That's the stand-up part.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was new to LA, and I got the invite. It might have been with Rich Roll. I'll have to go back and figure that out. And I got the invite. And one of the things that they used to do was, they had the, Midsummer Nights party or whatever it was, which is where the A-list of the A-list, and it's where everything. 26 years ago when I was single and interested, that's where everything happened, And then the other thing they would do is they would lease the mansion out
for events.
And so you could effectively go and lease the Playboy Mansion, throw a party there, and you were mostly excluded from the residence, but you could go in. There were certain parts. It's almost like the White House. You go on the White House tour.
Right.
And so they rent out all the grounds. They had everything very controlled. And then one of the sort of perks, because one of the things about Hefner was he never left home, really. So he was home all the time. So one of the perks is he would agree to make an appearance. So, they have their own party. It's like some sort of company or whatever throws a party. I get an invite. But, Hefner did come down at the time. That's when he was married or married-ish to two blonde wives. And I came down and I had the photo with Hefner and his two wives. And they put it on the wall and Gary saw it. Not really. But
by the time I got there, people always say, were there like playmates walking around? By the time I got there, all the playmates were replaced with nurses.
Yeah.
But I thought I was very excited about selling that place. It was.
And they had a zoo. He had a zoo on premise.
How long did it take to sell?
I knew, and it wasn't just me, we all did. I knew who our buyer was. It was just a question of, when you're an unprecedented price, you need to make the market. The guy, I knew who our buyer was.
Yeah.
He didn't know how much. He didn't know how much he had to pay for it.
Okay.
So establishing that and creating like a market by having other offers was critical. But we got it done very quickly. That sold immediately.
Okay.
And you had to, so you knew your buyer, you knew who your buyer was going to be, which is a cool, interesting thing.
No, I know who the buyer's going to be, and I'm wrong too.
Oh no, I understand.
Right.
No, but it's still interesting. It's a very interesting approach.
Oh, very.
And then you also knew that you had to create a market so that you could go to the person you thought was going to be your buyer and say there are other people interested.
Right. You know what? You always, especially in high end, you always have to.
That's what I was going to ask you. That's okay.
Yeah.
You always do. And this, it's more arbitrary, so you really do. But, we all list property and really don't know. All of a sudden, buyers and sellers have this almost fail-safe way to establish what something's worth. It works almost all the time. Every once in a while, someone will overpay because they wanted to. But there is a process. And this one was more complicated than most.
You have to sell the house, and then the the occupant. It's not like, we're used to a lease back. Oh, we're going to sell the house in 6 months.
He could have been there for 5 years.
Yeah, 6 month lease back.
Well, even more than that. I just didn't know what it was. It could have been, in big houses like here. I guess if you were in some development where everything was uniform, that's different. But there's an arbitrary nature to the price.
It could go $20 million in each direction.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
100%.
So what, I was going to ask you, so that principle, that process, that theory, which is practical as well, not its reality, like, is that how you approach every listing you take? I mean, is there a price point where you're really like you're creating the market? I mean, and you're really creating that sort of, for lack of a better way, like avatar or specific person perhaps, so as to who that buyer is going to be.
The buyer and seller create the market. I facilitate that. I don't create the market.
Right.
I'm not writing a check. No, I don't have that magical part. They do it. You need to educate them and get them comfortable in the process. But hey, listen, as good as agents are at establishing what something is worth, and I nailed that when I was 100% right. If you actually are going to make the purchase, and it doesn't matter if it's $1 million or $100 million, you get really good at establishing the value, and you are actually the market. I mean, you are like the ultimate market. So all those things, and then the competition, if there is competition.
Explain that a little bit more. It just works
itself out. Well, it's supply and demand.
No, I get that, but the thing that you said that, whether it's 1 million or 100 million, if you're prepared to make the purchase, you're really gonna work yourself through the process.
You're gonna really think it through. I mean, listen.
So you're a seller. You're representing the seller, but then what you're doing is you're putting yourself in the buyer's shoes. Is that what you're saying?
When you're a seller, you're putting yourself in your shoes. But part of being in your shoes is what the market will bear, and your situation and your timing. And I do believe that most of the time, buyers and sellers figure out the market. I mean, it's pretty damn good. There are exceptions, but in the high end, there's an arbitrary nature to it, just depending on who's available at any given time, how the house is marketed, how it's staged, being able to get in and out of the property, whatever's going on at any given moment, in the, just out there on the airwaves. All those things can play a role on getting a house sold, and there is an arbitrary nature to it, but how the market is established is that regardless of what's happening, good, bad, or indifferent, there's a buyer who's going to pay the highest amount that this seller is willing to sell it for, or that buyer just is paying more than what any other buyer will pay for it. And that seller, considering everything he has to consider, agrees to do it.
So when you take a listing,
it works well.
Are you very, very proactive? You're immediately like communicating with prospective buyers?
It can't. I mean, in this case,
I know. Well, of course, in this case. But I'm talking more broadly. I'm trying to take these principles.
Often I like to do that, and if you don't necessarily have the house locked in, that's a strategy.
Oh, for sure. And
if you can demonstrate
that you can bring the buyer.
Legitimately, you're bringing in people that will help, and also help figure out what something's worth.
Yeah.
And it's so funny in the very high end here. Again, if you were in New York in a building and there's like stacks and floors and you can really quantify what something's worth, it might be a different world. But here, and I'll often tell sellers when I'm sitting on the other end, when it comes up to price, I'll often say, listen, I just want to give you some inside baseball. Every agent you met is thinking several things while we're sitting down having this type of conversation. They're asking themselves, what do I think you think it's worth? What do I think it's worth? Mm-hmm. What can I say to this guy, this seller?
So good. Yeah.
This is not going to throw me out the door. And that could be too high or too low. So we're thinking of that. To a certain extent, we are doing some guessing. So what I like to do is I like to involve the seller and show them the data points I'm using. I don't get too personal. Yeah. Let me show you what I'm using to establish that value.
Yep.
And I always talk about, and I'm going to give this to Tom. I like what he had said. I don't think he invented it, but when he heard it, it made sense to me. I talk about a market, a pricing strategy opposed to a sale. Because you might not know. It might be 20% difference what something could happen under the circumstances.
Sure.
So it's how do we want to price it?
Yeah.
And I help them with the decision process. I don't like, and I don't think people like you going in there and telling them what their house is worth and telling and questioning their logic. I'd rather just get. No one buys or sells a house in any price range, in my opinion, and this gets back to my original thought, until they know the market. They just aren't. Up to that point, there are people who, like, they miss a house, they miss a buyer, they screw up. Once a buyer or seller, whatever process they go through, and it's pretty easy to do it today, when they really know the market, they're comfortable selling or they're comfortable buying. And up until that point, and that's probably, if I erased everything we just went around and round on, that's what it is. You need them, they need to really know what something's worth, or they're not going to make this giant decision. No one wants to be played.
Yep, that's it.
I don't care if you're worth $100 billion. Yeah. No one wants to be a chump.
Absolutely.
Now, on occasion, someone will go,
I have to have this.
I have to have it. They won't sell it.
Yeah.
I was able to.
So
put
you
that
go
together.
in then, in essence, informing them and coming with data to collectively, collaboratively collaborate with them on, right.
And as I said earlier, there's a long gestation process, often with sellers and buyers in luxury. As soon as you can start educating them on the market so they understand it, the better off you are. I can't tell you how many millions and tens of millions of dollars I have seen slip through my fingers because I listed a home or represented a buyer who didn't know the market. And they didn't do anything wrong. They just don't know. So they're going to not make the right decisions. Very rarely is someone just going to blindly buy or sell their home without them knowing exactly what they think the market value is. That's the key.
Okay. And your job, in essence, is to be a facilitator and help them get educated.
I think we need to educate our clients more than anything. And when you have that long gestation period, and when you have people in your pipeline, if everyone in your pipeline knew the market and whatever they're working on, those become great listings. Those become great buyers. Someone that doesn't...
Because they're realistic.
Yeah, when you meet, I mean, we go on a listing appointment and you just haven't met them, and you're like, you catch them at the bottom of the funnel.
Yeah.
And they are fresh. That person very likely doesn't know the market.
Yeah.
And it'll be hard to list it at a realistic price, or they will pass on that first really good offer.
Yeah.
If you really knew what your house was worth and you really understood all the dynamics, that first offer that people like pass on, they wouldn't pass on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly
And
right.
buyers, I mean, it seems like if you catch a buyer too early and they really don't know what they're doing, you're going to have a couple misses. They're going to have to lose a couple before they they understand.
When I wanted to get on the top of a realtor that works at our firm who does a lot of great investment, sells a lot of great investment property. I'm like, I want to get at the top of your list. So number one, I said, what does it take to get on the top of your list? And he's like, well, I can put you at the top of the list as long as you can make a decision very quickly. And if I call you first, for example, instead of the first guy I would usually go to, if I call you first and you could say yes or no very quickly, I don't lose much by going to you first. So I could do that for you. Okay, fine. And then the first property he showed me, I looked at, I go, I'll take it. And he goes, wait a minute. I expected to show you, like, I'm going to show you stuff, like, don't you want to wait till you see the second one or whatever? But I had such, my intention was not to buy the first one necessarily, but I have such experience in investing that I knew that it doesn't matter what you have to show me next or whatever is a better one coming down the lane or whatever. This is one that makes sense for me, and I'm going to say yes, let's go. And to get people to that point is really
what you're saying.
That's when being in real estate's fun.
Yes.
When you are, by the way, everything, when I teach people talk about all the mistakes that agents make, and half of them I've invented. Like, if you're doing it, I created that. 89, I remember that. If you've got a bunch of clients that don't know what they're doing, buyers and sellers, it's a clusterfuck. It is painful being in real estate.
Yeah.
if you deal with people
That's such a great
that know what they're doing, because you've taught them, it's a different thing. Don't we all know agents that like they don't? It's like you don't even know that they are in real estate or
it's
successful.
The blind leading the blind, and you just see them.
No, not what I'm saying. There are people that you don't even know are that successful or still selling, and they do shit ton of business.
Different.
They've got clients. They got people they work with. They have people that it's a long relationship process. They talk about real estate. These people are locked and loaded. That is an elegant way to sell houses.
Yep.
And I listened very recently. I had a string of very good-looking properties with sellers that didn't know what they were doing, and I wasn't able to effectively educate them. I caught them too late, and then they needed to sell, but they literally had these unrealistic expectations, and that can be very painful. That's when you're looking at being a hostess at the Olive Garden is a pretty good move. Free breadsticks.
Yeah.
One of the things that we talked about before was that you're really a relationship builder. There's a long gestation period, but on the other hand, you're not hanging out with your clients a lot. And when I'm talking to new realtors getting in the business, I'm always talking about building relationships. But then either they do or they don't. But then sometimes when they do, they're going to all the parties, they're doing whatever. But then when it comes time to sell real estate, that's where they're, as you mentioned before, they're going with somebody else. So
neither of them work by themselves. If you are in with a group or any of that's fantastic. That's 101. It doesn't get better. But what I'm saying today, you can't just rely on that. You now need to market to those people, but not necessarily even directly. Do you know who Jason Pantana is? I got to give propers what propers do. He's like the AI marketing guy for Tom Ferry. He speaks a lot.
Yeah, I do.
Very
for sure
smart.
I do. Yeah.
Talks about being a marketing plan is that I see you everywhere marketing plan. So if you're friends with somebody and
they see you
everywhere, that combination,
that's
gold. And that is where in the past you could have just been one, you could do one or the other, but the combination, and that person who's just relationship driven,
and they don't see you as that vehicle for their success in that context. That's what we always say.
But I need help. I need more help than that.
And I'm figuring this out, or we're talking about, I'm really thinking it through. So hey, listen, there's people that just do marketing, and I know a guy in New York, makes a ton of money, spends a fortune on marketing. He says, I rarely have I rarely do business with someone a second time.
Wow.
But his marketing is so effective that's what he does, and it works. Ed Kaminsky?
Yeah.
Sure.
I was on a panel with Ed Kaminsky, and one thing he talks about is if someone wants to break into an area, because he has a different mindset.
Right.
He goes, it's going to cost you a certain amount of money. You can do it, but he's very formulaic. You're going to have to invest a certain amount of money. I think when you're doing everything, especially if you can build those personal relationships, it doesn't get a whole lot better, but you've got to market to them. And you got to market to not just directly them, but you need to market to around them.
Okay. So now I need your help, and I'm putting myself in that agent's shoes because we have a lot of contact with these folks who work in our firm, and the better ones are the ones that they're in with that crowd, and they're in with the crowd that's buying. Okay, so that's awesome. But I'm new to the business, and I don't have the dough for them to see me everywhere. I don't have the I see you everywhere marketing plan money like Ed Kaminsky's saying.
That's what he says. You got to spend. You got to invest to get in that way.
And
so there's
other ways.
And I need to know what are the other ways, because that's not possible. I have one guy now. I've got it down to one guy I have in mind. And he is so personable.
I do too.
Now you'll know, right? So he is so personable, and he has very wealthy friends, and he he could get the small dinner with any of them.
Yeah.
But then
At
when they
least
go
as
to
of yet,
buy,
they don't see him in that light.
They buy and sell. They're going to go to somebody
Someone
else
else.
because these are rich people and they're not messing around with a $5, $10, $15 million house.
I'm a big fan of this podcast called the All In Podcast.
All
there
In.
are 4 VCs that get everyone to come speak, and they're very good at it, and they're having a lot of fun, but they're just so intelligent. They're just so intelligent because it's kind of like Shark Tank with really, really smart people, not like some superficial, silly thing. Even though that's cool in itself, this is next level. So what they all are is they're analysts.
Yeah.
They analyze people's business. They really understand the DNA. And one of them made a great comment. He said, like right now we're in this AI revolution. He goes, it's not these mega companies that make these big breakthroughs. It's the small ones. It's the startups that do. He goes, constraint, when you don't have the resources, constraint makes for great art. So fortunately, we live in a world like what we're doing right here.
I just heard a great quote just about that. Constraint makes great art.
Right.
I love it.
Yep.
It also
so now make great art for me.
Constipation as well.
Yeah, well, make great art for me now because I'm putting myself in the
What do they
shoes.
say? Necessity is the mother of invention.
Okay, great. So,
well, art is art.
Make great art and make invention for me because.
So now coming back to that question.
Every one of them will take. I've got 1 or 2 meetings in me. In other words. I'm going to go right back to, there's a game changer opportunity. You just have to recognize it. So now I've recognized it. I can get you dinner.
I'm that person.
I can get you dinner with anybody.
Okay. So if I'm going out to dinner, I'm going to a party, I'm going to a dinner party, I'm going out to dinner with 8 people. Here's kind of the thing. This is the shit I do, and I still do it. So I'm going to go meet with 8 people. I find out who the 8 people are. I look every one of those people up and find out where they
Preparation.
live.
Absolutely.
Okay. I use this product. It's not necessary, but called Property Shark. It's just where you can look up someone, or you could look up an address, and it'll tell you like the other properties they also own.
Yes.
It tells you when they purchased it. Some just great inside information. I also use the MLS. If I'm meeting with 5 people and one of them, their house is on the market, or their house was on the market 2 years ago, or they live in the same place for 15 years and you see that, all that's information. So not only do I do that, just find out where they're at, I also research their area. Because when you're doing this, you're not necessarily, everyone doesn't live in the same neighborhood. So if I've been to parties where I know I'm going to meet this person, I find out their house is on the market or they live in this certain area, and it's very easy to get a conversation going about real estate. Everyone wants to talk about it.
Yep.
So hypothetically, and I know the market of the people I anticipate who I'm going to run into, and sometimes no. And I want to know the market of the area they live in. So if I meet them at the market or a dinner party, I can have a very casual conversation. And it's like, you start talking, what do you do? I'm in real estate. Oh, great. Yeah. We've lived in our house for a long time. Where do you live? I already know where they live. And they go, we live in Brentwood. I love Brentwood. I go, there's a house that just sold like 2 weeks ago on like the 300 block of North Rockingham for like $12 million. I live on Rockingham, or I live next door or something. And they go, well, that one was like a 20,000 foot. Where are you? You're in the 500 block. The lots get bigger there. Oh, what's your ad? Oh, you're on the view side. And you start comparing that to this, and so you have those. It doesn't have. By the way, so the way I look at it, by doing that exercise, it might not come into play here. I might meet someone random and it comes into play.
Sure,
it's valuable, but I literally anticipate having those opportunities. And fortunately in real estate, everyone wants to talk about it. So that's one free way to do that type of thing.
So you just demonstrate your market knowledge, really, and you're proactive and you anticipate. And
especially if you're all over the city like LA, it's really hard to know that. So I have to do a lot of homework. If I was just working in one neighborhood, did someone put popcorn in the microwave?
That's my crazy phone. Just hit stop. Sorry.
So if I just focused on one area, it's really easy to know everything.
Yeah.
But if you're all over the place, it's not so easy to know everything.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I do. What we're doing right here, another thing, these guys, they have this all-in podcast, and that's not their business. They're talking about how content is replacing a lot of marketing.
Absolutely.
And content, I wouldn't say it can be free, and some of the best is free. And you got to be strategic about it. But creating, everything I do, my whole mantra is to be of service and value and be the knowledge broker.
I was going to say the knowledge be just a repetitive thing for
I have that, whether it's I'm talking to an agent or I help a lot of agents, or I'm talking to a client. If you have that information, I'm always doing that. But you can, if someone didn't have money but they knew how to talk, a lot of people in Hollywood, probably an actor or something, whatever it is, or even if you don't, that is another free way to start doing that. But you said something earlier, consistency in whatever you do is very important.
One of the things that Gary just talked about, because that's Gary Gold right there. And so a
lot of gold.
Well, I'll use it for myself without naming names necessarily, but Rich, our mutual friend, who's a great podcaster, Rich Roll, last minute said to me, "Hey, I want you to come to this event with me," and it was a large venue, but I knew it was going to get very small, and there was one particular person there that's like the biggest of big, and that's the part I'm not going to say who it is.
Diddy.
No, thankfully no. I knew I was going to be meeting that person. I had an idea that I might have, an extended conversation with that person. And I did not do the Gary Gold prep, because if I got this invite a week from now or tonight or tomorrow instead of 3 weeks ago, I would have gone on Property Shark or similar, because we have title toolbox and that sort of thing for our title company. And I would do that. And then I would do exactly what you said, which is, hey, so-and-so, like, oh, wow, where do you live? Because I couldn't get beyond it's Rich's friend, and there's all these famous people that then get culled down to the small group. So there's 50 famous people around, and they all want this guy's attention, while he's really interested in just talking to Rich and me. And I'm like, and we were talking about some really engaging stuff, and I just didn't have we should, exchange cell numbers, and I didn't have that one hook. And I could have done exactly what you said, which is oh, wow, you live in Brentwood. My guess would be, by the way, that he lives in Brentwood.
Right.
I know where his kids go to school. I know, I don't know where he lives, but my guess is he lives in Brentwood. And you're like, oh, wow, you live in Brentwood. Great. I used to live in Santa Monica. Yeah.
Or just could have fell out.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I just noticed a sale on da-da-da-da. And then Rockingham would be a great address. Oh, oh, wow, I don't live far from there. Oh, cool. I love Brentwood. I follow the real estate there and da-da-da-da-da. And he would have been like, huh, okay. Oh, let's say he's not selling. Let's say he's not buying. It's like, wow, if you're interested in the stuff that's happening around you, I could just send you, I could send you a property report or whatever, let you know what's happening every once in a while.
Now, I do prep, but everything that happens is organic. I'm not I'm not like a pariah. I'm just not like that. But I think it's thoughtful when you know somebody or you know what they're doing, and
Oh, you can't be overbearing. I mean, in a way, like I was sharing with you, I was underbearing.
That also can be weird. So, I mean, not under, I mean, if someone's,
it was very appropriate,
Yeah,
but I just
right.
couldn't get to the where it was appropriate to like exchange numbers. Or
well, you don't even have to do that. You just,
if I'd gotten so far in the conversation where that guy might have asked Rich, hey, what was that guy's name? That would be the ultimate, right?
I'm looking for that thread.
Yeah.
That's something to get something to like, like I'm
that
looking,
connective tissue, sort of. You're looking for that connection.
I'm looking, when
looking for the homework.
I used to go fishing with my dad in San Diego, and what you'd want to do, and they had a thing like the bite is on. So you'd sit there and you'd chum in the water to get some interest. And when you got something on the line, if you pulled too much, you lose it. If you wait too long, you lose it.
Yep.
You got to just have that moment where there's a little finesse and you set the hook. But I'm not this strong salesman.
Yeah.
But I do my homework.
Yep.
And you're
stand out.
So like you talked a little bit before, I'm paraphrasing, is to be of service to obviously your clients and to agents, to teach, to be a knowledge broker. Obviously it's clear as it can be how knowledgeable you are, and your track record speaks for itself. How do you market yourself so people know that more effectively? How do you build the Gary Gold brand? Because I also know that you're, very, you understand the power of building a brand.
Yes.
How are you doing that for yourself, and how could you perhaps do that more effectively?
I could probably do it more effectively. The one thing I've just gone all in on is I speak a lot. I do things like this a lot. I love it. I go out of my way to help real estate agents. Now, I didn't do that with any agenda in mind. It's just, I've been sober a long time, 30 plus years. And it's like I learned that in the program about being of service. That 12th step is being of service. And I've just discovered when I help other people, I learn that on a deeper level. And it turns out it's good business too. I get so much business from other agents.
Yeah.
And I didn't even understand that. That didn't even make any sense to me. So I get a lot of business from other agents. But I would probably be one of the most insecure real estate agents on the planet if I want to have something to offer someone before I engage in a conversation with them. So I can't call someone without like kind of bearing gifts. So that's the big one for me.
Bearing
gifts.
So
if I have something to offer them, information that I think might be valuable to them, I can call anybody.
Yep. Lead with value. I have to say, I define leadership as people that give first. And very few people do that take the initiative to create value, give first. Well, and over time, with no expectation, to figuratively, over time, you get back way more than you could ever give in multiples.
Right.
But so many people are so short-sighted, they don't see an instant return on their time or their effort, that they don't ever do that. And then nothing ever happens. So I think clearly you get it.
Why I do it so much is without that, I'm insecure. I used to be this fat, insecure kid, and it's still probably not a bad thing. That is in me.
Self-awareness.
And number two, I was spared, and as I said, I've been sober a long time ago, and I didn't have a long career, imbibing, but it was bad. And there was a bunch of people that helped me and didn't want anything out of it other than they knew it was just part of the program, just helping someone else. So
pay it forward.
It just resonates with me.
Yep.
So that's why I do it. It is kind of interesting that it turns out to be really good business.
Right.
And
I call it leadership. So anyway,
I'm a Jew, but I know that I like study. I'm not religious, but I like studying like the beliefs around religion and the concept of. It's similar to the concept of tithing. If you're there helping your competitor, what are you telling your brain? It's such an abundance mentality that I think is very powerful. There was like a scientist like
and
Andrew
there's natural
Huberman.
Reciprocity that comes with that.
Right.
When you give first, people they feel almost to some degree,
absolutely.
at least the right people, some degree of an obligation or like to want to give back, and then it creates that virtuous cycle.
If you give without expectation of getting back. So you give with expectation of getting back, it creates a heaviness with the gift.
Right.
But if you give without the expectation of getting back, that alone, then that really creates the sense of reciprocity with the right people.
Yep.
And if they feel no
then they're not the right
to
people.
The reciprocity,
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't do it with
Take the
expectation.
gift and go.
Yeah.
On YouTube, I watch a lot of things on human performance and health. And this one person did he was quoting a study of people that tithe.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
They turn out to be wealthier than people that don't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Doesn't seem like it makes any sense,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think that is a very strong message.
That's
sending
awesome.
yourself an abundance mentality.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like it took me a while. I have a bit of a scientific brain, and it took me longer than it should to figure out the cause and effect. So like when two things happen together, it doesn't necessarily mean a cause and effect, and people are always confusing that. And then there's the book, make your bed first or whatever, and if you make your bed, you're more likely to succeed. And I'm like, I never make my bed, and it's just like it's a self-selecting thing. It's not cause and effect. These two things are happening together. The people that make their bed tend to be more proactive or whatever, but it's not making the bed.
Right.
They just happen together. And then I started to realize that oddly, in some interesting areas, that the cause and effect weirdly work in both directions. So that and actually I was listening to Huberman, and I was listening to one on dementia, and he's got this great doctor expert on dementia, and they're doing this thing where they're trying to catch it earlier. So one of the things is they discovered your hearing. They have a hearing loss. There's a sort of
Right, I've heard that.
There's sort of like a there's a little telegraph, which is the hearing loss. So it is the dementia causing the hearing loss. But then what they do is if they catch that early enough and they fix the hearing loss actually helps stop the dementia.
The lack of hearing loss.
Yeah, that's right. The lack of hearing loss. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, it's like the hearing loss didn't cause the dementia. That's where you would confuse the two. But then it's this crazy thing that works back and forth, because people that are sort of, they're out of it a little bit, and then their hearing loss, they lose the hearing, and then they're out of it, really out of it. So I'll give them the hearing back, and now it slows dementia. I'm like, wow. And it's because I would say, oh, well, you tithe 20%, that's a self-selected group. These are people that already have abundance. They already have abundance mindset. Of course they're going to do better. It's not the tithing that's causing the abundance. It's the abundance that's causing the tithing. And that's a confusion. And then I find that if you take, and it's like back to behavioral. I work with a cognitive behavioral therapist who most of his clients are addiction clients, and I'm like, well, yeah, you go to therapy, you have an epiphany, and then you can change. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, that's not true. I'm like, what do you mean that's not true? That's what therapy is about. And he's like, well, the other way is, forget the epiphany, okay? See, if you're drinking and you want to go to a therapist to unearth all of the why do I drink? Was it my dad was a drinker? What were all these things? You lay on the couch for 5 years trying to figure out why do I drink? He goes, I have another solution for you. Quit drinking.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get an epiphany real fast. The epiphany comes after the behavioral change. So the tithing, to use that example, the tithing, yes, people naturally tithe. They're more abundant thinkers if you're grabbing onto it. But if you take something that's grabbing onto it and you go, you know what, how about this? Try this.
Right.
Tithe, see what happens. And it can have the cause and effect can go weirdly. And then back to exactly what you were saying about giving. Okay, so just take my word for it. You're not, you're a gatekeeper, not a giver. Take my word for it. Just give, see what happens. and then they just give, and then they find the abundance after the giving.
Well, in all fairness, there's people who do that and it works for them. So it's not. This isn't an exclusive. There's people who are very selfish and it's effective. So there is that.
Effective to a point.
Now, but let's do an experiment. 2025. Take 10% of your income and give it to me. I bet you're going to do better as a result of it. Mm-hmm. So each of you give me 10% of your income. What do you think of this?
Yeah.
I'll consider it.
I was going to say, yeah, unwilling.
I mean, it's not going to help me, so it's selfless, but it'll help you guys. So I'm willing to do that.
You sure?
Part of the experiment, yes.
I love it.
You're willing to receive. Yes. I like that.
Yeah.
And one of the things one of the mindset pieces, and it was very reminiscent of a mindset coach that I had, who I will say was the coach is Ricky Williams, the former Heisman Trophy winner,
right.
And he had all these amazing questions. And if you don't like the way something is working out, he would say, one of the questions you could ask is, what could I do or be different in order to ...
Right.
And sometimes the question doesn't mean it has an answer.
Right.
And I might ask that question, and the answer that I get back might be something I don't want to do. And that's all. These are all possibilities, but just ask the question. So, for example, I'm selling at $1 million price point, and I really want to sell at $5 million. And I just, I've had some opportunities, and they just haven't happened. Gary says, recognize it, and I'm recognizing, I'm going after it.
You execute, and then you've got to leverage it.
Yeah.
So when I went from 2016 to not being able to get a $3 million listing, I remember I got this $1.6 million listing, and that listing I got as a result of starting to work with Zillow, and I was doing some things with them, and I went up and I flew up there. I was being very helpful to them. I was very early on, and I figured a few things out, and I ended up getting this listing for 1.6 that I donated my commission to charity. It was what's his name? Ashton Kutcher's house, and then Zillow did this deal with Ashton Kutcher and the Gilt Group.
Right.
Did something where we turned it into a design house.
Right. I remember. Yeah.
And then
interesting.
I was the agent, and we all worked together. I met an architect that I ended up getting a referral from 5 years later for the Playboy Mansion.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Number two, I sold that, and that became what I leveraged. Now, there's other ways to leverage it, but it was a $1.6 million sale. But I leveraged the donation part. I leveraged the fact that it was Ashton Kutcher's house. I leveraged.
And tell us a little more.
That's
when
the
you say, how did
recognize.
and it's also plant the seeds, play the long game, which
it was my talking
right.
point. And the other thing I started leveraging was.
So wait, your talking point. Elaborate.
When you're meeting with someone I can bring that I sold the Playboy Mansion into every conversation.
Okay, so that's what I thought you meant, but okay.
So that helped me.
You're very purposeful about putting that into conversations.
This helped me get a $3 million listing. And the other thing I started doing, then I started talking about my relationship with Zillow, and it wasn't going much anywhere yet. But then I remember I sold this home for $6 million to someone from China. And I did that because I would, if I got up to pee in the middle of the night at 12 and I got an email from someone from China, I'd respond. And I was beating everyone to the punch. If you just do it in working hours, it's going to be 2 days over and over and over and over. I would have a conversation with them right then. So I ended up selling this home for $6 million. So my big talking point was, I'm the Zillow guy. I'm the guy who's using this, and I'm getting clients from all over the world as a result of it.
And it's a new thing,
It was
and you
very
need to
new.
know about this. So he becomes the knowledge broker.
It went over like a lead balloon, by the way. At first, people were looking at me like I had two heads, and then it started to take off.
And can I ask you a question? What caused you to continue to persevere then, when it didn't go over well?
Because it was so real.
Okay.
I mean, I sold this home for $6 million from this person from China. I remember this other buyer from China. We had been corresponding when they got there the day before, and I met him at a house. they hugged me. They were so happy, like there was someone that they had a relationship with. This was working. And I had really figured out a lot of things, how to do the same thing everyone else was doing on Zillow, but be more effective.
Yeah.
I owned a zip code. I also just changed all my copy. You don't want to say something has killer views or cool, or you got to use words that might be able to translate in every culture. So I was very careful about that. And then, but it started to take off because I met a bunch of celebrities by responding at 11, 12 at night, really famous people. And Zillow started getting popular and people started hearing about it in a much bigger way. So it was resonating and no one else was coming to the party. So, I mean, at some point I was able to demonstrate that if someone's looking for a home, they may have an agent, but they're looking for themselves and they're looking on Zillow and Realtor and Trulia, but primarily Zillow. And it started to resonate.
Yeah.
And then I leveraged that. And I remember, and that $6 million sale helped me I had an old client that was selling their home that was 10. I did, just to hedge my bet, bring in some other agent to get that sale.
Yep.
When I got that sale, I used the fact that I sold something for 10 when I went after this $20 million listing that I put a ton of work into, by the way. And then that $20 million listing now put me within striking distance for when this opportunity came up on the Playboy Mansion.
Yep.
I had something to work off of.
Yeah.
If I just had sold something for
$3 million,
$3 million bucks,
yeah.
it's a stretch. But I was in the luxury game.
It's interesting.
So,
1, 6, 6, 10, 20, 100. I mean, just and very intentional and strategic.
Well, I didn't know where I was leading, but I
Yeah.
did want to raise my price point.
Yeah.
At one point, I was up there in the past, but that was a long time ago, and there was some.
And I think also open-minded and curious, like just with initiative. So
Zillow was such a people thought I was nuts.
Yeah.
It was like embarrassing, and I was like going up there and meeting with them and just really, and
why? Like so, like
because I had everything else was not working, and I was but also it was like I was getting a couple of things happened. I started getting calls on listings that weren't mine. I didn't even understand how it worked.
Yeah.
Another thing, I was very.
But that's also you staying always in curiosity and asking.
Absolutely.
To give Steven Shapiro credit,
right?
He was the first person to. No, that wasn't. Steven was using this one photographer. I don't remember how long it was. It was probably 25, 30 years ago. It was the first guy doing digital photography, and they were really good and embellished. At the time, I remember it's Everett Fenton Gidley. Everyone else was using regular prints.
Yep.
And he was using it, and I started using them. The one thing I didn't realize what he was doing, because before that, he was doing video. We were doing video like 30 years ago, but there was like a big VHS. That was Steven as well who came up with that one.
Steven Shapiro.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was like right after him.
Yeah.
So one thing happened with this One thing happened with this digital, and I didn't know this was happening, but all of a sudden, the photographer, not knowing to me, had a website. But this is like early in what a website even was. I started getting like correspondence from, like, I remember this one guy in France looking for a $25 million house. I don't know how he got my message, but he had seen these properties. This guy was posting on his website all these properties, and some people somewhere, France might have been the first place because I think that they had something that predated the internet, so they might have been a little more advanced in this. And all of a sudden, digital photography made a huge difference where people could literally see you online. We take that for granted.
Yeah.
In the MLS did not have photographs in it.
Yeah.
And they certainly didn't have like the internet. So when that started happening, all those things just in different times helped my career.
Yeah.
So one of the things is that and it's just tying back one of the pieces is if you're this will be a Gary Gold plug. If you're in the $3 million price range, or back to that agent that we know that gets any meeting they want. And now we're gonna educate him, and he's gonna learn about the area. He's gonna do all that stuff, and now doesn't really have the track record, or for sure doesn't have the track record. And now he's gonna get the shot at the $8 million listing or the $12 million listing. Not a bad idea to call Gary Gold.
Absolutely.
I bring in muscle. I mean, I still will bring in muscle for an area that I think I should bring in him, or I get that all the time, and that's how I did it. When you do that, because once you make one of those sales, then now you got something to talk about.
And you know what I hear people talk about, which is the opposite of the abundance mindset, is that I was like 70-80% sure I'm going to get this thing anyway. Now I'm going to bring in this big name, and they're going to do nothing. I'm going to do all the work, and now I've just cut my commission in half. You talk about negotiating commission. I've just cut it in half.
Half of something versus perhaps
I like
zero of
I love
100% of nothing.
Doing
right?
things with them.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, more than the most successful agent in an area, an absolute killer combination is a seller who knows, likes, and trusts one agent who's paired with someone who's got the credibility to do it. That combination, winner, chicken dinner. The top agent, they may know he's big, but they might not trust him or think they're going to get the attention. The combination of the two, nothing is better.
I just brought in an agent into our Beverly Hills office, and he did exactly that. He's like, I want to break into the luxury market. I've got a $12 million opportunity. I have the relationship. I don't have the track record. I don't care what I got to do. I'm going to bring in someone else to get that listing, and as long as my name's on there and I can market it, leverage it, that's all. And literally exactly, and I'm just thinking about him. Jaden, shout out to you, brother. That's exactly what he did, which is very smart.
I don't know if it happens with every agent, but with me, you're going to learn a lot.
Yep.
I mean, I'm very open and free, and I show them what we're doing. And so,
what does, in your ideal world, the next 3 to 5 years look like? What will you have to have done, have to have accomplished, whatever that may be, such that you're ecstatic?
I really do like contributing.
That's obvious.
Yeah. I love selling real estate. I really do. And if I ever stopped doing that, I think I would lose my understanding of this world. But I see just doing something bigger than that. I mean, I'm on like my 4th piece of software that I've been involved in. So doing things where a large group of agents
so you
could
can
benefit
share
from.
your knowledge and wisdom.
Yes.
And how do you do that most effectively? Is that
right? So I've tried that in multiple ways. I have contributed to a lot of agents, thousands of agents. I'm looking to monetize that, and I've done that as well. But I like that, and it's such a perfect
fit
accompaniment to being an agent.
Yep.
Because it also ends up, not even intentionally, becoming
brings more abundance.
Yeah, more abundance, more business.
Yep.
And I relate to agents, maybe because I am one, and they're actually pretty affable, gregarious people. I just dig it. I love going to a conference and talking to everybody.
Tell you, I'm one thing, and we have a lot of experience with agents. The diversity, which I love, is unbelievable. The different perspectives, everything. The diversity of I'm talking about the mindset diversity.
Industries they came from.
I mean, just how they think about things, how they approach things, everything. Industry.
So
it's amazing. I always call it, and I'm a well-educated guy with a great education and background. You don't need any of that in real estate.
Yeah.
I always say it's the ultimate equalizer. It's a meritocracy.
It is.
And I think that's amazing.
One of the most, I don't remember the person's name, one of the most memorable conversations I ever had, when I sold the Playboy Mansion. I talked to hundreds of agents at that event, and one guy walks up to me in the hallway and, introduced himself. He goes, he congratulated me and goes, my average sale, I'm in Texas, is $250,000. Wow. He goes, but every time I sell like 3 or 4 of them, I buy one. He goes, I have 50 doors. He goes, I generate $1 million of income before I sell one house in a year. And I just looked at him and go, can we trade? That just seemed like I was so impressed with that. Yeah. And you know what? I used to kind of look at people from other walks of like selling houses, and I just didn't necessarily think about them or relate to them. I remember going to this CAR conference like 25 years ago thinking, these are not my people. And then I started talking to them, and I discovered that luxury agents aren't the most sophisticated people out there in the world of selling. Now, we're very good at working with people. And like, it's like we know how to detonate a bomb. We know the finesse of working with people, and that no one beats us in. But if you're selling a lot of houses, that's a sophisticated operation.
Yes.
That needs systems. There's not any room for error, not a lot of room for error.
Yeah.
And those people are way more professional in administrating and creating a real business. And often when they retire, they actually have something that's worth something.
Yep, they have something that's saleable. They have a database. They have systems they can hand to someone that can continue to generate.
And they're not as vulnerable as agents selling these big houses that they could live or die if a couple deals happen or don't happen. So I've learned a lot from them, and they are historically been better at marketing than we are.
Yep.
One of the things that
very
one of the things it's super impressive because you end up being at the cutting edge of so many things over time, even while recognizing this guy did it first, but I did it second, and it's like, you don't have to
reinvent the wheel.
You don't have to invent it, but there's some sort of discernment there because there's so much out there that's happening. And you even said, I've invested in, several technology pieces. You must have kissed a lot of frogs. You must have gone down. How do you keep going down the alley? How many of these shots that you take are working out, and how do you keep yourself motivated after you take 3 shots and you miss all 3?
Hey, they've been equally painful as they have been winners, and you can't tell when you're doing it. But I am super interested.
Mm-hmm. Is it super interested?
Yeah, and even if I dismiss something, I have conditioned myself to still not write it off. I can be wrong. I had this one thing. I'm going to give them what was the name? There was this company, what they did, and I saw them at an event, and they had a very effective way to ask for reviews. I thought it was interesting, and I should maybe do something like that because I didn't have any. I just never asked for reviews. And you do have to ask to get them, by the way.
Like client testimonials.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So I had my assistant look into it. I saw him at a conference, and I took a card, and I looked at like the reviews, and I realized the ones they have are cringeworthy. So I said, well, maybe if I do this and I write what I want to say and not make it. There's some people who do some dumb things. Like, this one guy sent me one asking me what I thought about it, and it was, I'm having a contest. Who can get the most 5-star reviews? Would you please help me? I go, you're basically saying, can you help me deceive other people?
Yeah, come on. And what's in it?
So I wrote one, but I didn't necessarily want to send it to a billionaire. I didn't want to.
Yes.
So I said to my assistant, I go, let me go through my list and let's come up with a list of people that I'm okay with sending this to. I don't want to just broadcast it. Somehow she didn't hear what I said and thought, let me just broadcast it and send it to everybody on my database, including agents, including people who own restaurants, including dry cleaners.
I'd be embarrassed.
Everybody. And, oh God, ended up being so great. I can't even tell you.
I knew, yeah.
I had people that I was shocked gave me reviews. I mean, shocked. Like, one guy is the biggest class action lawsuit attorney in the country, who's a badass. I would never ask him to do this. I'd be embarrassed. Beautiful review. Another guy that created maybe one of the top 5 sitcoms in history, who I didn't even sell a house to, I just worked with, and it didn't happen. glowing review.
Yeah, accidentally got the email you would have never sent.
On top of that, the way they did it, this company, and maybe you can put it.
What was the script you used, by the way?
I just bet if I've ever been valuable to you in any real estate endeavor, something like that, I'd appreciate a review if I've ever been valuable to you. I left it at that.
There you go. That's great.
That puts it on a positive spin for sure.
Yeah.
It's not asking for a 2-star review.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then asking what star or anything.
Yeah. No.
So, I mean, the agents were like confused. Why are you? What? Yeah. At some point, I just turned it off. But the other thing that happened as a result of that, and I never would have anticipated it, 2 things. Number one, every time they post a review, it helps your website.
Absolutely.
Because it's this, so, and they do it that way. They design it so it just ups your traffic on the internet.
Yeah.
For a moment in time, and that's why another review and another review.
And number 2, a lot of people just called me. It prompted them to think of me. Never would have thought either of those things. I mean, so that was.
It's also just like like action. Get unintended consequences when you come from a place of contribution and value,
and take action.
Teaching my course.
Yep.
And I was doing that like, okay, it's the online education business is $1 billion a day business worldwide. Now that covers a lot of things. It's a big business. I'm a good speaker. But one thing I never anticipated and I only did it for a small group of people for a short period of time. I did it for 3 months. Each time with a small group, because it was like just testing it out, I got listings from it. Mm-hmm. That I was not expecting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to go back and just pick up a couple of pieces. And one of them is there was a piece of it where we're talking about how everything, there are parts of the business it's just so it's evolving all the time, and then you also said there's parts of the business that don't change, and interesting because you talked about going to see Zillow early on, and there's a lot of interesting overlap in thinking and lots of other things. But I was going to Zillow very early on and flying up to see them and having conversations with them as well from a brokerage side. Right. It was before they, had gotten, and I was talking to the chief revenue officer who was let go of not that long after. Yeah, his name, I think that is
Greg Schwartz.
That's correct.
He was there for a long time. Greg and Spencer were the 2 guys that ran it. And
Spencer Raskoff,
friendly, both of them.
Yeah.
They're both great.
Yeah.
And so it was sometime right before Greg was no longer the chief revenue officer.
That wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
No, maybe. Greg. Oh, Greg maybe.
Greg, Spencer Raskoff. But it's been
both bounced.
Yeah. So one of the things that he shared with me at that time, which was well into their business model, but still a while ago, is it was pre-Zillow Flex, but they were selling their zip codes. They were selling. And what he told me was one of the problems that he was trying to solve.
I know what it is.
Was that, and he made me guess, and I guessed it very wrong.
I know what you're going to say. People don't call back.
Correct.
He hit it on the
That's
head.
Correct. And what he said to me is, guess what percentage? Now
it's like
these
80%.
But these people are people who are paying. So he said, guess what percentage of our leads that we hand out don't receive one phone call, not one. I'm like, well, that's got to be low because I can imagine the follow through, that could be really bad. But one call, it's going to be like 20% don't receive one call.
It's like 80%.
70 at that time. He's 70% of leads that were paid for don't receive one call. And then he said, guess what the average is, number of contacts to getting the deal. And that number was 11. So even on average, I mean, of course somebody, oh yeah, sure, I'll sign up with you after one call or 2 calls, but for every time that happens, and you have 20 calls or 20 contacts. And so the number of leads that they were closing was so dismal. And he had certain agents, he's like, I have this lady down in San Diego and she's crushing it. And, I need to figure out how to do that because at the end of the day, they can only really charge a certain percentage of what their lead is worth. If you can't get anybody to work on them, these leads are worth less because eventually somebody's going to look up and say, never mind, I cancel. And so it feels like that's a piece of the business that never changes, is you still have to have the follow-up, follow-through.
100%. Now, one of their issues, and I think it's the issue with some of those leads like that, is it's not just agents being lazy. I think they recognize it, is they created a product that generated a lot of worthless leads. Mm-hmm. Now, I've made a lot of money on that. At one point, it was like 40% of my business was coming from Zillow leads. Earlier on, they were better, but a lot of it has to do with marketing, is generating leads that are good, not just getting people to engage for false reasons. So some of the processes are like, they get a lot of leads, but a lot of them, people don't even know what they even did. They don't even know what they're doing. They really didn't want to lead. They wanted to see the information on that property.
Do you think it would benefit their business model? So now they put Gary, Paul, and Josh in charge of Zillow. Do you think it would benefit their business model to really refine the leads, maybe refine them down 50%, and then maybe you can charge double or more?
One thing they started doing, and I haven't really followed them in the last 6 or 7 or 8 years. I just got out because things changed when they went to mobile more for a number of reasons. Primarily is my face would show up every time. So someone might be looking online for months, not click on anything, but keep on seeing my face. I become that obvious person to click without them even
knowing. Yeah.
But now it's buried at the bottom. They never see anyone's face. So that's what I thought took a lot of the value away. Mm-hmm. But they would go over numbers with me, and none of them had any intelligence or discernment about. They were just coming up with numbers based on a bunch of analysts and tech guys, outlook on it. They were looking at the wrong things.
Okay, yeah, which is Paul's point.
They were looking at the wrong things. Yeah. Now, what Flex did is that they started qualifying people.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and that, but even with that, there was this company, and I did sell a $17 million home, but there was this company that would, and there's a ton of them, there's hundreds of them, that they get leads and then they send them to you if you give them a 25% thing, but then they send it to 4 agents at the same time. There's a lot of different models. A lot of those people that you call, they don't even know what's happening. They just don't know what's happening.
Right.
I just wanted to know how many bedrooms the house was. Yeah. I just wanted to know the square footage. I wasn't looking to have this conversation.
Right. Yep.
So I think, but what I did for Zillow is they used to have all these people that weren't doing well with it, and they would call me and say, "Can you talk to this person?" And I was so pumped on Zillow that I'd say, "Yeah," and people's reasons why they thought it wasn't working was insane. I remember this one person, this happened a bunch of times, where they go, someone reached out to me about this property, and it's in escrow. It's not even for sale. So I said to him, I go, so you're telling me that there's a buyer looking at a property, and the one that they were interested in isn't available.
And that's not a value?
And that's not a lead?
Right.
You've actually demonstrated demand, and now you have an opportunity. And I go, I have got a really good script for you that's very hard to deliver, but let me tell it to you. Just respond to them. That house is sold. What are you looking for? And people didn't get that there's sometimes what looks like a miss is actually an opportunity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's back to your point about recognizing it. Yeah. Here are these things right in front of you, and people aren't.
You know this is super simple, but I think one thing I was looking at open houses last Sunday, and I picked out about 5 or 6 areas, in our MLS. There was over 300 100 open houses. I think if I was an agent, I would do anything in my power or if I had listings, I would be holding my own open house. I think open houses right now are huge value. We just had a change in the rules. Lots of people, just maybe based on even understanding or being comfortable with this whole, I had to sign some agreement with some, they just go to an open house. And guess what? They might not be encumbered with somebody else. You can be the knowledge broker. You can provide information. It's really easy. You don't have to put the full court press on them.
It's a captive audience. They're coming in to see you. Come on.
If the house you're on they like, you are a star.
Yep.
So I think holding open houses now is super valuable.
And we just got done doing a whole thing on open houses in our fire coaching.
Oh, for sure.
Just getting open houses for listings, because most people think, a lot of agents think that's one of the best ways to get a listing, period.
And it's also a great way to sell a home that's not selling. This is all my analysis, but there are homes that are tough to sell. If it's open on the weekends and someone can have already dismissed the house, they go, it's a weird house, I don't want to see it. And it's 4:30, what the hell, we got time to kill, let's go check it out. People will check out a house that they wouldn't make an appointment on.
Absolutely.
And then the story they have a week later, we dismissed this house. We didn't even want to buy this house. We didn't want to be in that area. We walked in and we fell in love, and they buy that house.
Yep.
Guaranteed.
And to your point on how many agents, particularly experienced agents, don't hold their own opens.
I gave up for 20 years, and I didn't think they were that valuable at one point. And then and I still don't, but I should more. And as the people looking online becomes more prevalent, open houses are more important.
Mm-hmm. Because that's the bricks and mortar of the,
that's part of it.
Yeah, you get the attraction. You get the attraction online, and then you get the bricks and mortar of the actual experience. Because some things, you can rule houses in and rule houses out, whether you're 100% accurate or not. That's different. But you're ruling a bunch of houses in and ruling a bunch of houses out online. But to your point, then when you go see it, it's a different experience. A house that I really thought we would like, have you ever had that experience? A house we thought we would love, we go and we're like, actually, we don't like it. So of course the opposite is true too, which is, we thought that we wouldn't like this one, and lo and behold, I bought my house in Santa Monica. Driving by, there was an open house. It was the ugliest house I'd ever seen. And I'm like, it's 2 blocks from where I live. I'm just going to pull the car over and I opened the doors of this dump of a house, and I didn't know there was that kind of a view.
Right.
I didn't know that existed in Santa Monica. And I opened the doors. I'm like, whoa! And I'm like, whatever it is, we got to get this house.
I think VR, virtual reality, has already antiquated. I think the next big thing is something AR, actual reality.
Actual reality, yeah.
I love it.
And one of the other experiences too is
I don't know if we're ready for it, but
yeah, right. One of the other experiences that Josh and I have talked about too is that when we go to open houses that are held by people on somebody else's team, that number one, if the homeowner knew the way these people were holding the open house, they would be appalled. And number two, I think if the rainmaking agent knew. I mean, I walked into a house in the Bird Streets. It took me 1 second to know my client is not going to like this. And I walk in and they're like, "Oh, hi," which is that's a plus already. "Oh, hi, how are you?" I'm like, "Great. I'm an agent, so I'm looking for a client." So already they're less interested, and this. I can tell in 1 second this house isn't for me. And I turn around and walk out, and I'm like, huh. And I look on the sign, and it's a huge, maybe it's Steven Shapiro or whatever it is. I'm like, this guy's got a lot of inventory. If he were sitting the open house himself, he'd be like, oh, you can tell in 1 second your client will hate this, but I've got 20 other listings. What's your client interested in?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Systems and technology can fix that, where the people on there are given the tools to do a great job and taught how to do a great job. because that is a great opportunity. And sometimes if you're not the person, but you're that hungry person that does everything right, you could be great at holding open house.
Oh,
you could
for
be
sure.
Killer.
Yeah. But you got to be trained. You got to be prepared. You got to all of that stuff.
But a lot of that, no one knows this shit by osmosis.
Yeah.
So like one of the things I, do is just this whole process for preparing someone for an open house. That
I love it.
Yeah, all that stuff's really important.
Yeah. Where am I going to find that online? That process, the Gary Gold method.
That's the genie that we're
working on.
No, I'm not working on it.
Okay.
A company that a partner in. It does. That's not even the thing that got me hooked on it, but what it does to prepare like a team with 30 open houses is like insane.
Wow.
And the world's gotten to be. Those things are going to become default. Remember when staging was a big deal?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a game changer. Now it's just the vid.
Giving. Yeah.
Just to be in the game.
Yeah.
So world's becoming more competitive.
That's for sure.
That is.
And as a result, we're getting better.
Yep.
And I'm excited about the industry.
Yep.
Last one. Go back to and then we'll do the fire.
You are an attorney. This is total attorney shit.
One of the things we talked about was, there's this NAR settlement, and you touched on it a little bit. You also referred to it before as being the Y2K, meaning the big thing that wasn't a thing. So how do you think the world's changed by the NAR or other changes on the horizon?
Well, people still need to buy and people still need to sell. And, is there agents that aren't going to make as much money? Is buyer agents possibly not making as much money as they used to? Maybe. But we live in a world. I remember in the 80s, I belonged to this gym called, what was it called? It was in Westwood Boulevard. And I remember Springsteen and Schwarzenegger would work out there.
Yeah.
It was something
fancy.
Stephen Cates owned it, and my brother was a partner in it. Matrix 1.
Okay, yeah. That's
not
what I was thinking about.
the first time I've ever seen someone getting a trainer, not like an athlete, just someone training.
Yeah.
They had trainers to help you work out.
Yeah.
That's 40 years ago, but now it's really commonplace. There's guys that work at UPS that have a personal trainer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before I came here, I dropped off my pooch, shout out to Riggins, rock and roll Riggins, to camp. That wasn't a thing. That wasn't a freaking thing. Maybe a little bit in New York.
Yep.
People come walk their dog. Time is so much, especially in more expensive things. People will pay crazy. There's tons of places that will prepare mediocre food for you, just to make it easier, and people like it. And it might not be like just making something fresh right there, but it's worth it. I mean, Uber Eats and none of that shit's free.
Yeah,
there's a premium to it. I've been at parties where someone needs cigarettes and they just pay like $40 to have them show up right there.
Yep.
That's the world we live in.
Yep.
All of a sudden you think people are paying $40 to get a pack of cigarettes opposed to walking, 2 blocks. You think people are going to say, you know what? I'm willing to pay a premium for cigarettes or for wine or for my dog being walked or someone to clean up the shit in the backyard. But I know a new guy that just started a business where he cleans every week your trash cans. He's killing it down in Newport Beach, especially for Airbnb people.
Yeah.
Do you think all of a sudden we're going to go, you know what, all that stuff I don't have the time for, but I want to sell my own house. I want to are you kidding me? Will there be a group of people that can do it another way? Yes. I think that we are in a big service economy. People like service, and that's not going away anywhere. The buyer, and I love what Tim Smith said. He goes, I don't know where this is going, but it's nothing that getting more listing can't solve. So, and that's always been the better business.
Yep.
So I think people are going to still need help. I don't see there's going to be a huge shift. And that I've been talking to people, like talking to Tom, just, he's got hundreds of coaches teaching thousands of people, and he's saying, really hasn't been that big shift.
Yeah.
Now,
it's like
fortunately, people have been prepared.
Yeah. Know your audience, be targeted in your audience, and create value for your audience, and people are going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Period. And if you don't have value, then no one's going to pay.
Yes. I mean, that's always been the case. Now we have the fire
round.
Now
We'll do the foul round.
Yeah.
And so, especially with a man of your wisdom, all of these questions could be,
but this is going to be quick, right?
Yeah, we're going to be quick, and we're going to withhold comment because that'll get us down the bunny trail.
That's true.
Right.
What's your idea of perfect happiness?
Fulfillment. Don't care about happiness. I'm all about fulfillment.
What do you consider the most overrated virtue?
When principles, I think that's the biggest bullshit line. Often, I'm doing this on principle. Sometimes you could just go down. You could do this most destructive, crazy thing, standing on principle. I would watch that. And just at the same point, being judgmental of others.
What's your greatest extravagance?
My greatest extravagance is I'm always looking, and I'm willing to say something like some smart ass funny remark, even if it's just completely out of context. And I'm cool with the repercussions. I don't have no filter, but I go for it. And that can be extravagant.
And that's cool.
Yeah.
What's the virtue you're most proud of? What's the attribute you're most proud of?
I now have the ability, and it was the opposite of no matter what happens, if something seems adverse, the first question I ask myself, maybe the second question, is like, I look at myself as like the star of a movie, and it's like, instead of looking at it as a setback, I go, what door is this opening? Where is this leading to? What positive thing is this leading to? I don't necessarily look at things as good or bad. Because I don't know the whole story yet.
What do you most value in your friends?
How long I've had friends for. I mean, I've got friends for a long time. I would say that's the thing I value the most. I mean, there's just people I've known for, before the car. I mean, I had never left LA, so I got some just deep relationships.
What's a talent that you wish you had?
I would love to play guitar. I mean, like Steve Lukather play guitar more than anything. I mean, I imagine myself playing guitar way more than I would admit to a healthcare professional.
What is your greatest regret?
Not learning how to play guitar. No. My greatest regret, I don't have them because I just don't know the whole story.
Love it.
If you went on a hike, there's great trails in LA, you go on this difficult hike uphill, and
I do that all the time.
And you get to the very top of that hill, and you look down, and you see your colleagues in real estate, your friends, family, everyone in your life down below, and you shout one thing. What do you shout?
I'm not even sure what that means.
What's the thing you want to tell? What's the one thing you want to say to everybody?
Adrian? Not really sure. I don't know. I mean, if I would want to...
It's the one...
I mean, I would like to be choked up if I was saying something like that. I would just hope for that. I don't think it matters what I say, but just to show emotion. I'm not the most emotional person on the outside.
And that's, it's the conversations that we've had with you today. Go ahead. You got it.
No. Put money in the meter.
Put money in the meter.
Look at that. Only Gary Gold.
I love it.
I don't know. We could ask 7,000 people. How many would come up with
Gary,
Well, that's,
right.
I'm on top of a mountain.
Right.
Gary, I would say wasn't stumped by anything and has had phenomenal insight. And so on that last one, we'll get back to you, or just put money in the meter as a fine one.
There you go.
A woman asked me that I first got that question from a woman who was a psychologist and then became a sports psychologist and then realized that that was too narrow a field and then became an executive psychologist. I was doing it with a group called Tiger 21, which is the rich man's club. And she asked that question and a few people offered their answer and she was looking for mine and I didn't answer the question. And afterwards, she was like, I wanted to hear what you had to say. And I said, well, I had an answer, but I was embarrassed to say. I usually wouldn't be. That's an environment where I would. And I was like, I was, embarrassed of the answer that I had, so I withheld it. And she's like, well, would you tell me? And I said, sure. And it was, love me. And I didn't want to say that in front of that group of businessmen or at that moment in time because it just felt like needy or weird. I mean, that's just what I was going through my head. But that's what popped into my head at that moment. And I didn't want to share that. And she goes, wow, okay, that's cool. Because I had a little bit of a relationship with her. She goes, I could see that. And then she said, you know what the number one answer I get from like really successful people, because I do this at many of the Tiger 21 groups. I said, no, what's that? And she said, fuck you. I'm like, seriously?
You know what I was thinking as you're talking? I told you so.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. It's a little bit like fuck you, no?
It's
different.
It's not as
angry,
bad.
Yeah.
It's just maybe a little bit more finesse.
Yeah.
But
I think mine is make it happen.
Make it happen.
Like that's.
I never asked you the question, but now there's your answer.
Yeah.
I never asked Josh. It's make it happen.
Yeah.
That's a very Josh thing, which I
Life is
appreciate.
short, man. Go for it.
And love me in a way. I mean, I also, it was 10 years ago, and I feel like I grow every day, and maybe I was thinking whether my thing would change or not. But sometimes I think love me is the opposite of make it happen. Could be.
Not opposite.
I mean, it could be. If you're so busy, like getting people to like you or
Right.
worried about what people think.
Are we still recording?
Yeah, of course.
Wow. This is so
One thing I gotta say
editing.
is
We
one
do
of my
editing.
core statements, and it's very in line with who you are in abundance. You find what you're looking for.
Yes.
Like you choose. You can find the good. You can find the abundance. You can find the scarcity.
100%,
You find what you're looking for.
It's all
so
available.
how your perspective shapes reality.
Yeah.
So I love that. Like that's something that I definitely take away from you and the abundance. People say it all the time, but are they really like? And obviously, it means different things to different people.
Also, I could stab you right now.
Yes.
Yeah, you could.
He'd be a tougher one to stab.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, you wouldn't
All
be tough
things
to stab,
being equal.
stab to matter.
Right. I'd defend myself.
All
pretty
things
well.
being
But I don't
equal,
know.
yeah.
No, but you wouldn't. You wouldn't be waiting for that.
Okay.
Or unless you. Where are you from?
What?
Philly?
Philly.
Yeah.
I'm from
Yeah,
Pittsburgh.
those
Pittsburgh's a
guys
little
are
iffy.
Phenomenal, man.
time.
You're
Thank
one of
you
the
very
most
much.
interesting people I know.
Did I?
And the wisdom and the
you know what?
knowledge
This is
are
long form.
extraordinary.
This is like Joe Rogan shit right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, phenomenal, man. Really
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
you.
You're
The
welcome.
authenticity, the humility, the confidence, all of it.